Welcome to the Rainmaker Multiplier on Demand, a podcast for leading financial professionals, or rainmakers, and their teams that offer support for securing a successful future. From marketing help to staffing structure, listen and subscribe for actionable insights from advisors and skilled professionals alike.
Good morning. I'm Kirsten Schlumbohm, Vice President and Head of Annuity Sales here at C2P. I'm excited to have our compliance team on to talk about this topic. Now, a lot of times people think compliance, they're the ones that are going to yell at us and, say we're not doing the right thing. But I'm going to say these two gentlemen are the angels on my shoulders, keeping me out of trouble. So whenever I get time with both of these gentlemen, I feel like I become a better person. So I'm excited that Luke Ripienski, our Chief Compliance Officer here at C2P and Prosperity Capital Advisors, is here with us. He oversees supervision and compliance for the investment advisory business. He also serves on Prosperity Investment Committee, helping guide the firm's investments oversights. With prior leadership at roles at Principal Financial Group, MetLife, Luke brings a deep expertise in compliance operations and financial advising. He's also really good at keeping me in line. Our other guest barista is Dustin Anaas. I hope I said that correctly. Dustin is dedicated at our compliance analyst, dedicated compliance analyst at C2P and Prosperity Capital Advisors. He specializes in SEC regulatory adherence for communications, processes, and marketing, as well as suitability review within the financial services industry. Dustin plays a key role in safeguarding operations and enhancing client trust as he oversees the compliance for thousands of pieces of content for various firms. Welcome, Luke and Dustin. I'm excited to have you here. But let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about setting up your organization for AI use. I'm going to kick it to you first, Luke. Before even choosing AI tools, what kinds of internal assessments should firms run to understand where AI could bring value and where it might create a risk?
Yeah, well, thank you for the very nice introduction, Kirsten. As you well know, I really enjoy working with you, and you're one of my favorite people in the entire C2P organization. So, to answer your question, though, where can AI bring value? Dustin and I, long before we were asked to champion the AI cause for C2P, we were early adopters within the compliance department itself. So a lot of what I talk about and the lens that I'm looking through is going to be from a compliance perspective, but essentially everything I answer is going to be able to be applied to what you're doing in your own role, regardless of what lane you're in your particular firm or what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So how can AI bring value in what we're currently doing today? I think what we did to start off was trying to identify where people were spending time on repeatable, low-value tasks. So we kind of categorized everything we were doing. We write a lot of policies and procedures. We need to do due diligence on money managers. We need to do due diligence on software providers. We have regulatory documents that need to be submitted to the SEC. We have a consultant that we use. So really just kind of aggregating all of those things, coming up with a list, and then saying, really, what's my lowest hanging fruit that our current version of AI can enhance our workflows and make us more efficient? So really just thinking about where's the best bang for your buck and how can we save the most time for our team? And that's what we've been working on probably for about 18 months now.
Wow.
So yeah, and I would encourage everyone to kind of go through that same list, make an inventory, like what are my least favorite things I'm doing, or where is it really difficult for me to get started? I know, speaking as kind of my personality, oftentimes I will be thinking about, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z, but I just have trouble getting started. And AI for me has been kind of that nudge where before it was, I got to write a 4 or 5 page policy. And now it's AI is going to write a 4 or 5 page policy for me. I'm going to have it in 10 seconds if I prompt it correctly. And then I just need to go in and identify where the edits need to be made, how I can customize it to match our business. So it's been kind of a game changer on giving me a kick in the butt on stuff. The other part of your question, Kirsten, was around risk.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, fortunately, unfortunately, some compliance people like all the regulatory heat that we get in this industry. I would prefer it to be more common sense, but our reality is we're regulated by the SEC and we're highly regulated. So for us, we saw that immediate opportunity with AI, which is what I talked about as far as kind of identifying that low-hanging fruit. But then it's a potential liability too, because we just don't know what we can and can't do because the SEC hasn't given us a lot of guidance. So what we did is we introduced AI in kind of a way where we're trying to minimize privacy risk. So that's stuff like data exposure, personally identifiable information. You never want to be uploading that to your AI client of choosing. The other big thing, and I think a lot of people that talk about AI leave this out, it hallucinates a lot. It does, it'll give wrong answers frequently. So it's just kind of putting some of those guardrails in place to make sure that everything you're doing is been fact checked and sourced. So things like that are big risks. Really the biggest thing is the personally identifiable information. Like you certainly don't want to put any client information into AI. And I'll probably talk about that a little later. But at this point, I think that's probably a good start for where AI can create some risk for your organization.
I like the idea of using AI. When we get analysis paralysis when we're working on something we're not really excited about doing. So leveraging AI to help you with those tasks that seem daunting that you'll put off, but if you use AI, you can get it done faster. It's such a great tip, Luke. Thank you for sharing that. It helps me out on the day-to-day because I always try to do the things I don't like first, but this gives me another tool so that I can get that done faster and get on to the things I enjoy doing, like working with our advisors. Now, Dustin, and in the early stages, firms may test AI for content creation or analysis. What should the review process look like to catch the issues before they reach a client-facing stage?
Well, I'm going to take just a little step back. And, we talk a lot in our team about using this as like another employee for each of us, right? Like as an assistant, right? And I know, Kirsten, you're going through training a new member on your team right now, but it's like the better you train your employee, the better results you're probably going to get out of that employee. And the same way is going to happen when you're setting up marketing or literally anything in your AI component, right? So what does that mean, right? It means uploading as much information into your profile as you can to create the outputs that you want in the style you want. Maybe you want it to be optimistic. Maybe you want it to be a little hard on you. Maybe you want it to challenge you, create those kinds of things. But then also upload all your website information, your LinkedIn profile, all your pre-approved stuff so that it gets a good sense of who you are, where you are, and what good target markets you might want to be looking at, right? And then you want to probably set up some kind of layered review. Now, Luke already started talking about this with this policy generation, right? He talked about from inception all the way to how he kind of does it, right? But what does a layered review kind of mean for new people using AI, right? That probably means you're simply typing out your prompts and then you're looking at it and saying, and poking holes at it and saying, hey, I don't like this, and telling GPT what it's doing wrong and having a conversation about it or what you would want to change and what you would see in that, right? And then that would probably evolve into some multi-step prompts, right? Okay, so now you've got a really good prompt and you feel comfortable with your prompts. So then you type in your prompt and say, hey, I want you to create a social calendar around life insurance month, if that's coming up, right? So we want to do a social media campaign around that. And then after you create that campaign, I want you to act as an editorial director for a marketing company and make sure that these are the most effective communication pieces that we can possibly send out. And then after that, I need you to act as an SEC compliance officer and ask me questions from a compliance standpoint about these things to see what I should be changing, right? So that's the kind of layered prompts that you can be doing. And you can either do that in multi-step prompts, or you can kind of set up GPT projects, which is what I use to kind of, get those things kind of in areas to train my responses better for each specific task.
That's awesome. One, I never thought about uploading my LinkedIn profile to my chat GPT to help me create content that seems more like myself. That's a really great tool. And you just got Stoyan so excited about using AI for life insurance. And if you didn't know, you still have 12 days left of Life Insurance Awareness Month to take advantage of that tip that Dustin just gave you. So don't be shy, use AI. Now, Luke, as Chief Compliance Officer, you're looking ahead at risks. I mean, that's your job. You keep us out of trouble, for lack of a better term. When a firm considers introducing AI, what are the first organizational steps leaders should take to set themselves up for success? Because at the end of the day, we want our advisors to be successful.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of things you should do, and it would kind of depend on what your role within your particular firm is. I'll start with what I know the best, and that's Prosperity Capital Advisors. So the very first thing you need to do is you need to set up some sort of governance. So with Prosperity, we set up an AI policy, one that applies to our investment advisor reps and the access persons that work with them. And then we have a separate policy for our C2P employees that are not regulated by the SEC. So they're very similar policies, but there's a little more flexibility when you're not under the purview of the SEC. So you create those policies, and you really want to be looking at them frequently. So AI, as everyone knows, has dramatically evolved and changed, and it seems like every time you turn around, there's a new enhancement. So it's not just having that policy that you create, it's having a policy that you create, but then also it might be a calendar reminder, it might be an app that you use that reminds you, okay, every 3 months, every 6 months, it's time to go look at the policy and see if we need to adjust it. With PCA and C2P, we're currently adjusting our policy semi-annually, but that, of course, is subject to change. If there were some wild new SEC regulation that was introduced, we would go look at it immediately. As AI becomes more and more static in what it can do, maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line, we probably won't look at it as frequently. But it was always a great step to take to have that policy in place. Stuff that I would do kind of internally that doesn't revolve around creating a policy, which, creating policies is pretty boring. Even compliance people aren't huge fans of doing so. Steps you can take within your company, depending on how big your organization is, what we find is you kind of want to have that advocate in every lane. So who on your marketing team is talking about AI? Who on your operations team? Your compliance team? Find somebody in each lane that can advocate for AI, that can talk about AI, bring it to the forefront. We actually, on my team, about 12 to 18 months ago, we kind of followed the level 10 meeting structure for our team meetings. We just went in, edited, and added a 10-minute period of time where we just talk about AI. Wins, losses. Dustin created a boot camp where we're kind of going through on a weekly basis and testing out new things. So we've made it a big initiative within our group, and I would really encourage others to do the same. And then when Dustin was answering his last question, he talked about considering AI a member of our team. So this has been more of a culture shift. A lot of times, what's happened is Ryan Warner has been on the compliance team working at PCA for 7 years now. So what do all the new people, me starting 3 years ago, Dustin 2 years ago, Natalie and Steven recently, of course, what do? We reach out to Ryan. Hey, Ryan, what are we supposed to do with this? That we stopped. It's not okay. We ask AI first. We get that answer. We consider AI a member of our team. And if we need further clarification, then we go to someone else on the team. So we're trying to kind of reduce friction points where you'd have to ask someone else to get an answer when all the answers you probably need are right at your fingertips. So another thing that I've told my people, just stop with Google. Stop. Have ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or whatever you're using, have that on your bookmarks. Have that open on your tabs all the time. So it's just become second nature. I'm not going to Google it anymore. I'm going to AI. So those are some of the things that we've tried to implement over the last 18 months.
It sounds like you've really embraced AI or AL as a team member.
Absolutely.
And I love it because when you can empower your team to find the answer and help you create process, you become a more powerful team. So that's awesome. Now, Dustin, from your perspective as a compliance analyst, how does the sheer volume of content AI can generate change the way firms should think about supervision and oversight?
Well, there's like this old Abraham Lincoln quote that is, if I was to get 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening the axe. Right. So just because you've got this amazing tool at your disposal, right? Don't go in there and just start using it to just crank out marketing material. You got to have your strategy in mind before you do it. Don't just use it to generate more, you know? Focus on your goals, don't stretch it yourself too thin too on marketing, right? Like don't say, I'm going to post every single day and I'm going to create brand new ideas and all that. Try to dig deep, try to use it to who is it that says niches lead to riches, right? Like that's kind of what we want to probably use it to dig deeper into. And also use it to build off the firm resources. Like C2P's got such a huge wealth of amazing resources, right? So use it to rebrand it for yourself. Maybe use it to throw in a few local touches. Or maybe you work a lot with doctors. Maybe you want to recreate some of these awesome pieces, but maybe you want it to focus on doctors or teachers or things like that. But what it will do is, it's going to get you, the more you do it, it's going to get you cleaner drafts. It's going to get you faster approvals. But what you should also be doing is uploading your approved material back into the system so that it learns, hey, this is what works. This is what my compliance department says is good for me to use. And you're going to end up with some great outputs down the road.
It sounds like AI is going to be only as strong as we train it. So I love the idea of you create the document after it's approved, you're uploading it to make sure your AI understands what's approved. That's great.
Exactly, Kirsten. Like, well, imagine you've got your employee and you're having it do all this good work for you and you didn't tell it that it did a good job. This is what we ended up using. How are they supposed to know? Same thing with ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever you're using.
I say please and thank you to my Chat GPT because I'm always polite in case they want to rise up. Luke, do you have a separate profile for business and personal? Do you keep work and life separate if you're leveraging AI in your day-to-day?
It's a really good question. And yes, absolutely, I do. You likely don't want to commingle for a variety of reasons. And with AI, some of this stuff is very difficult to set up from an enterprise perspective. So what we have is there's data requirements that we have as an organization from an SEC perspective. And what we wouldn't want you to do is have a personal account that you're also feeding business information into. So I think that there should definitely be that line between them. I can get frustrated at times when I'm working on my work computer and I'm not logged into my ChatGPT account for my personal side, and I don't want to kind of toggle between them. So the little hack that I use is I just have two browsers. So I have a Brave browser and a Chrome browser. And all of my personal ChatGPT, I've got my Chrome browser up and I'll just plug it into that one. And then Brave browser, I do all of my C2P work. So I keep them very separate. That wasn't always the case. For a long time, I just had the personal account, and I kind of want my business account to know my personality as well. So I took a lot of elements in my historic chats that were personal in nature that I didn't mind if they ended up in my business account. Like, what's my actual personality? How should AI interact with me? I would bring some of those chats over, and you do have to do it in a copy paste manner, but it probably only took me 30 to 60 minutes to kind of bring some of that historic data from my personal to my work side. So yes, I would encourage you to keep them separate. And there's a very high likelihood that our policy will need to be adjusted in the future such that work should go in work, personal should go in personal, the same way we do with social media accounts, email accounts, just kind of having that barrier between what's going on at work and what's going on at home.
And to that point, unless you're highly organized too within your system, like you don't want that information to be crossing paths with each other, right? Like you don't want it to think that your business is really interested in vegetarian recipes because that's what you're really into lately, right? Like, so that can just kind of confuse the two together unless you're really well organized with it.
Well, Luke had also mentioned policy. So what are some must-have guardrails when we're looking at internal policies? Let's say I have Kirsten Financial Services and I am trying to set up my guardrails. What would you put in place starting right from the beginning, Luke? Or what would you advise?
And this is a tough one to answer too. I'll draw on what we've done from a PCA perspective. But it's difficult for us to put these guardrails in. We embraced AI a long time ago. We know what it's capable of. Unfortunately, what we're capable of doing in our current organization and with what's currently available with ChatGPT, a lot of the things we want to turn on, we can't turn on. And that's frustrating. So a lot of these must-have guardrails might evolve near term, and we're trying to put things in place such that we can really supercharge AI. Please be patient with us. We would love to tell everyone, yes, you can do whatever you'd like in there, but it's not practical right now. So some of the guardrails that we do have in place, assuming you're not in a locked down enterprise contract, which almost nobody is, it's a lot more expensive. There's minimums. Assuming you're not in a lockdown enterprise contract, and I said this kind of in one of the earlier questions you asked, you need to have your PII not being used to train any external AI client. That has to be toggled off. At C2P, we have a GPT business account such that the administrator of the account can actually turn off that setting so that anybody that's kind of in your hierarchy won't be able to turn it on accidentally. So right now, our data is not being trained by, or not being used to train other AI. It's not being used to push out answers to others outside of the organization, which is good. There still is the concern with ChatGPT retaining our chats for a period of time, which doesn't happen under the enterprise contract. So I would start with the PII stuff. I'll keep saying that because it's the most important thing. You don't want that going in there. Something else that I would avoid, guardrails that you should have in place around AI washing. I had no idea what that even meant up until a couple of years ago, but that's one of the few things the SEC has said. Do not AI wash. And what does that mean in just kind of layman's terms? That's basically just exaggerating or making false claims about how you're using artificial intelligence. So don't say you're going to deliver the world through AI when all you're doing is, asking it a recipe for dinner. So make sure that whatever you're saying is actually what you're doing in your role. And that would speak to like kind of the marketing pieces, what you're putting on your website, what you're telling clients in meetings. You'd probably want to have a policy around what you're going to do with AI note takers. So on the PCA side, we approve Zox to take notes during client meetings for our advisors. And then on the internal C2P side, we've actually approved Zoom AI Companion. There's other tools out there. You'd want to do really good due diligence on them. They're amazing. I think they're a huge benefit. And as I look forward for what we can do with AI, these are going to be an integral part in kind of really making it easier on us, maybe creating a virtual personal assistant for everyone in the organization. Like a lot of these integrations, calendars, companions, these are things that can really supercharge our efficiency as we move forward. So there's that. And then the one I definitely don't want to leave out is integrations. It seems like every time I log in to ChatGPT, I'm told, hey, we can integrate with Google Calendar. Hey, we can integrate with Box. Hey, we can integrate with OneDrive. I would not be allowing that in the beginning because you're essentially giving all of the information that's stored into there right into ChatGPT or Perplexity or Copilot or Gemini or whatever you're using. So having plans around those elements is incredibly important. You don't want to be giving up your data for free. And even if you weren't worried about giving up your data for free, what could happen when you integrate and then you give everyone in the organization permission to have access to that information? Let's say compliance has a heightened supervision plan for a rep and someone else in the organization just asks ChatGPT, hey, is anybody on heightened supervision? Hey, what's Jason Smith's salary? Hey, who has the most HR complaints? Got to be really careful with the integration. So having a plan around that is very important as well.
That is so powerful. You brought up some things I personally never would have thought of. So thank you for sharing. But since we're talking about integration, Dustin, as firms are taking their first real steps into integrating AI, what should leaders prioritize to build a framework that's scalable long-term rather than just short-term and experimental?
Yeah. So I'm going to piggyback off Luke's idea of having an AI kind of champion within each department. And that doesn't have to be the leader of that department. It really doesn't. It's just got to be somebody who's curious about how this is going to work. And I would try to have that person or people focus on, 1 to 2 extremely high value use cases and play in that sandbox as much as possible to try to really derive as much value on that as possible. How, if whether that's time saving, if that's making things more efficient, if that's trying to explore ways to use if you have Box, how to use the systems within Box more efficiently to set up review relay systems and things like that, workflows. And then set up metrics and monitor them, share these metrics with your team, tell them what you're doing to try to share the curiosity. And then once you're done with that specific use case or two, then build playbooks off of those, right? Codify your learnings, build prompt libraries, save them in Excel documents, and then upload your Excel documents back into GPT and say, hey, how can we make this better? Turn it into training documentations. Luke mentioned this boot camp that we're doing. I already know that if I were to do it again, I would change it a million ways, but that's okay. That's why we're kind of going through it. Regular check-ins, a wiki, I know Stephen Phillips on the JL Smith side is doing like an amazing job with AI stuff. And every time I hop in there, I'm super great. But we also got to put that SEC regulated lens in everything too, right? So how can you function without PII, right? So that might mean digging deeper into Excel or digging deeper into Outlook to figure out how those can automate your processes for you, right? Or, and then how to keep good audit trails, right? Like if a regulator were to ask you how your prompts were created, would you have a good answer for them? You should be able to do that, right? And maybe most importantly, like do all this to align the AI framework, like Luke was talking about earlier, to your company's overall goals, right? And so that's where this should really start. Pick one small use case and really work the heck out of it to try to meet your company's goals and align them with your AI goals, and build training documents out of it. And it's really where the magic happens. It's really kind of fun.
I have so many questions, and you mentioned workflow. We're running short. We're almost at the bottom of our 30 minutes together, Dustin, but can you briefly talk about how teams can set up workflows to ensure consistency across all these areas? Because when you are talking about this lane and that lane and everybody compiling information, how do we set up that workflow so we're not stepping on each other's toes, for lack of a better phrase?
So one good way to do it is to tell GPT every system that you're using, every piece of software that you currently use, right? And ask it, hey, how can Box work better with Microsoft Office? How can Box work better with my email systems? And I learned about a system called Box Relay that we actually have access to at GPT that does some really awesome things, right? That not many people know about or even knew about, right? So you just kind of got to pick at the questions that how GPT might be able to help you, and then figure out what that might work best for your team, right? Like the marketing team was super curious about this Box Relay thing. And frankly, the other people that I've told about in the company are like, cool, Dustin, I guess, and here's one thing though, is it taught me how to set up I sent the same email over and over, and I was clicking into an email file and opening up this and that, and it taught me how to do a Microsoft email template. And literally every time I click on it, I smile, and it saves me maybe 15 seconds every time I do it, but it's easier, right? And that's a way that it taught me how to do it. That's a workflow change that I just said, hey, can I do this faster? And it taught me how.
Thank you. Thank you, Luke and Dustin. I mean, you guys bring such a wealth of information regarding AI. There's so much we can learn together, grow together, and just be better together. But Luke, Dustin, thank you for being here today. It's always a pleasure. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for tuning in. This podcast was brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Never miss an episode by subscribing now to discover new resources and strategies. Visit c2penterprises.com to learn how we can help scale and secure your business. At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable, but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include options and projections of C2P, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.